We're going to be dealing with a rather interesting topic today, that is how to choose a law school post this COVID-19 situation that everybody is facing the world over. Joining us today, we have Professor Dr. Srividya Ragavan. She's a professor of law at the Texas A&M University School of Law. She also serves as the faculty director of their India program. She specializes on issues relating to international trade law and intellectual property rights. She has a number of very reputed publications to her name. She is an alumnus of the National Law School, Bangalore, and has also served as a Fulbright specialist for the South Asia region. She now is one of our main advisors and patrons at Vijayabhumi School of Law at Vijayabhumi University. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us for this informative session. Thank you for taking out the time to be with us and all our participants and share your perspective with us on how to choose a law school post the COVID-19 situation. So without further ado, handing over to you now, ma'am, because we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you for the really nice introduction, Kritika, and thanks everyone who's joined the session. It's really nice to, I want to say, virtually meet all of you, and it's lovely to see so many participants wanting to get into the legal field, right? So I want to talk about the topic. My area of specialization is intellectual property and international. Right? Both of these areas have become important, just like how law has become important post the COVID-19 situation. To rewind back just a little bit, law has always been a very, very important area of study, partly because whatever you do, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a researcher, whether you're a scientist, whatever you do, ultimately it's law and the regulations that are set up that will actually enable things to come to the table for the rest of the people, right? The COVID-19 situation is one of the few times, right, the importance of having regulations that, that the importance of having regulations that help the people to A, get access, and B, to also manage these critical times, as in every other critical time, has become important. And so we do see, even in the United States, there's a surge of interest in the legal profession, and of course in the medical profession as well, but much more for the legal profession, because as the situation evolves, we have seen a lot of interest in in private as well as public law, right? For students like you who are interested in becoming lawyers, the question of why law school and also what kind of law school should you go into are really important questions that will define the rest of your career, right? So I want to take a break, and I want you to think for less than a second about how this COVID-19 situation befell all of us, right? And for somebody like us, who are sitting in the United States, we went on spring break for for like a week, which is part of our schedule. And in the middle of spring break, it was decided that, look, the virus situation was so bad that we couldn't get out of the house and we can't go back to school. For our students, our last class was, let's see you after about 4 days, and then class was suspended. I know that in India too, you were looking at normal course of life, and then one day life took a turn in a different direction, so to speak, right? How did we manage all of this? We took everything online. That's A, right? We took everything online. Our classes go online, our lives go online, and we're all, our entire life has changed in the past year or so. But that's only one part of the story. The other part of the story is how have our lives changed such that private transactions between people have changed, right? So in a lot of ways, you'll see that the way we deal with people, things that were not, the courts have taken things online. Much of evidences that were not initially acceptable because it had to be printed and signed and so on and so forth, we now accept virtual signatures. The Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin sat virtually online to take a decision a few days back. So if there is one thing that this COVID-19 situation has proved to us, it is that things are changing. And so the kind of profession you choose, the kind of places you choose to further your career should accommodate or should have the ability to accommodate to the changing times. Right? Only yesterday I was speaking to one of my colleagues, and he said that any big university that did not have an online platform, that did not adjust to this online platform, has now been downgraded in the US in the ranking, which I thought was just just something amazing, right? Nobody would have thought that would have been the case. I mean, several big universities resisted the online platform, right? This was just about a few days back. And now, in a course of 2 weeks, life has changed so much that the online platform becomes important, right? Given all of this, what is one thing that defines the next century students, right? When we were growing up, and this was when I was in school, which is several years back, right? Pure law was really the most important aspect of life. If you're becoming a lawyer, then you knew pure law. So you would go into real estate law, you would go into different areas of pure law. By the time I graduated out of National Law School, and we're only talking 5 years, we're not talking like a big change even then. By the time I graduated out of National Law School, in some ways, intellectual property became a huge aspect, right? So I do my LLM in England, I come back. In another 2 years, we felt that law and economics was such a big thing that those of us who did not have the economics background felt that, look, we need to know a little bit of economics, right? Even though some of us had studied a little bit of economics in the National Law School, we felt that, we should have done a little bit more of economics, right? And by the time I'd come to the US, we'd done a lot of things. Today, I can tell you, interdisciplinary papers get the biggest grants, right? So it's not enough that you do pure law. You want to be able to weigh the consequences of your legal questions as against, how will that, from an economic perspective, right? From a social studies perspective, from a political science perspective. So, the spectrum of things that actually affects a pure law question has become wide, and therefore it's important for students to have that interdisciplinary perspective while also keeping one area of specialization. So in some ways I'm not dispensing with the idea that yes, you should be a specialist in an area of law, but I'm also I'm stressing the importance of some of the interdisciplinary questions that we face, right? Even a year back, there was a huge discrepancy in global versus American lawyering. And I talk only about American lawyering now because I'm going to go to Indian lawyering in like a half a second, right? So if you come to the US, it always was the US Constitution, the state versus federal questions that dominated our discussions, right? And there was a certain level of international trade, but almost from an exceptionalism perspective. We are the global leaders, and how do we manage this whole international trade phenomena? And COVID-19, in this past 2 weeks, we see that the globe has become much more important, even in the United States, as a unified perspective, right? So we want to know what happens in Italy as much as I want to know what happens in Texas, because we suddenly realize only if Italy is doing well, can I get trade from Italy? Only if China is doing well, can we start trade with China? So the global perspective has become a very, very important aspect of lawyering as well, right? So when you deal with an issue, we see that there's a wide spectrum of law that's become important. That's A. And this wide spectrum of law develops over essential, or in some ways develops over basic areas of law. So today, intellectual property, trade, immigration, arbitration, energy law. These are all big questions that dominate discussions. These are all big questions that affect these are all posited on basic areas of law like torts, contracts, property, and so on and so forth. And from that perspective, you also see that these areas of law have become more specialized. And in each of these areas of law, you do see the influence of social, economic, statistical, and other interdisciplinary perspectives, right? And even within this area of law, let's take IP as an example, right? From intellectual property, we've moved on to privacy, intranet, cybersecurity. So there is no more intellectual property specialization, right? We now hire, are you a cybersecurity specialist or are you a trademark dilution specialist? Are you a geographic indicator specialist? So the level of specialization, but the ability of that specialization to right to interact with the larger interdisciplinary perspective has become an important question. So going back to the question of the choice of the kind of law school that one would think about is a law school that could bring those interdisciplinary perspective, that could offer you the opportunities, right, to pursue some of those interdisciplinary perspective, right? So for example, in my law school, we allow our law students to take a couple of engineering courses if they want, and vice versa, right? And that's the kind of university that you have to look at, even within India, right? From a sort of a futuristic perspective. I want to take 2 courses on political science, maybe 1 in political science, 3 in economics, right? So the ability to integrate law with other areas of importance to the society is going to be important. And as you go into 5 years of law school, you realize that your interest changes. The realities change, and that's definitely for sure. And the disciplines that impact law would change, finance and other things. I mean, the number of disciplines that impact law would also change. If there is one other thing that COVID-19 has proved to us, it is that the world can slip into chaos without a moment's notice. Right? All of us believed that, yes, you will have calendar. We planned 2 years ahead of schedule. I knew what I was teaching in 2024, yet I don't know if I'll be teaching online or in class for my next week now, right? So the ability, you can call it chaos, but this is also the new globe which will descend us or which will push us to new realities with very less notice, right? So as a lawyer, or as a aspiring lawyer, you should basically look for a law school that prepares you, that keeps you ready for the changing times, that prepares you ready not just for the court and the traditional processes, but also the ability to accommodate to the 21st century. Go online and teach, or go in front of students and teach. We've seen how some of the both lawyers, law professors, solicitors, everybody have struggled to get to the online platform. Those of us who were more flexible have been able to accommodate pretty quickly, and that's helped us quite a bit, right? So that ability to have an open mind to change to the realities of time is important. And as students, your trick is in choosing a law school that gives you the ability, right, to exercise those options, those choices, and presents you with a wide variety of these options. So you could structure and tailor your career in a sort of a unique way is a very, very important phenomena. So with that, should I open up for questions now, or do you think we have more time? Let me ask Ms. Bandari.
Questions that have already come up. Am I audible?
Mm-hmm. Yes, now, yes.
Yeah. So I think there are people who already started asking us questions. So if I had to sum up, I mean, you're very right brought to the table that, this entire COVID-19 situation has made us realize how integral technology has now even become to the legal profession.
Absolutely.
Speak in terms of legal education. We have also realized that it's so important for students to now seek interdisciplinary combinations for the
Mhm.
career of tomorrow, because there are more and more fields that are now affecting law and the legal profession, which will require a more holistic approach to the law subjects, which requires some knowledge of other fields as well. So I think that's very insightful. So one of the questions that I see somebody has asked us is that how do we, somebody asks us that how do we analyze the combinations that one must pursue, and how would you suggest that how do students go about selecting those combinations today, and how should they plan their career path?
Sure. So the analysis of the combination is really a twofold phenomena, right? One is your interest, and B is your ability, right? So if you're naturally right inclined towards let's just say data, then I would do enough courses so you can actually you can actually collect data, know how to code, and then do things with data, and then provide a more statistical perspective, right? On the other hand, if you're not a data person, you don't like data at all, you've never really liked statistics, then I wouldn't force myself to go learn that when you're in law school, because I would then look at what interests you. And if your interest is more of a sociological perspective, then I would take more courses on the sociology of law. Similarly with technology, right? I mean, we have a lot of both colleagues as well as students who've done masters, who've done PhD in different technologies, biotechnologies. People do biotech and patents, and biotech and other areas, and other areas of intellectual property. If you're inclined to say computer technology, then you'd go towards data, statistical analysis, things like that. So your interest and your ability would be the two things that will guide you towards how to choose a particular unique career path, right? And then how do you go about, that was the second, right? How do you go about structuring a career, right, such that such that you make best use of your 5 years? That really depends on, but I don't want to say it really depends. You have to be very aware of the fact that the biggest benefit of the present situation, the way our lives are today, is your ability to weave an independent path and a unique path, right? Just because your friend does energy law doesn't mean you cannot choose, for example, arbitration law and then become the best arbitrator. But the trick is in figuring out, being aware, self awareness, figuring out, okay, this is what I want. And then once you think this is where you're doing well, interest wise, to know what kind of options, career options are present in that particular area. And then start towards a level of specialization right from your first year, right? First and second year. So that's the other important aspect of both choosing and weaving your own career path. Sorry, is that sufficient? Do you have the clarification? Sorry.
Yeah, so I think, ma'am, that is, I think what you said is absolutely bang on. I noticed that a student has actually, the same student has asked us a follow-up question that how to find those abilities and also structure the career based on combinations. If I just had to answer that, because like you very rightly said, that it's so important for you to discover for yourself what kind of passion you have, what interest you have, and not follow herd mentality. So actually, I must tell you that the university that me and ma'am are working on in India, called Vijay Bhumi University, we actually
Sure.
focus on helping students discover their passion, discover what they actually want to do, and we help them in facilitating that discovery process. If it's a student who has an interest in technology, and as well as law, we offer them that interdisciplinary combinations where they can pursue degrees in artificial intelligence, data sciences, along with pursuing a BBLLB program. So I think that those sort of combinations definitely, we realize this problem. So this is something that we are also doing at Vijay Bhumi University. So, ma'am, going to the next question, a student asks us that a student is from Punjab, and the college that the student has been dreaming of going to is in South India. So, as we all know, we are in this lockdown situation. So, he asked that how will he be able to make the right decision regarding, this dream school of his that he wants to go to in South India. What are your comments on this?
What was the question? How does he work towards going to the dream school?
The question rather is this, that with this lockdown situation, because nobody had foreseen this, so the student was aspiring to go to a school in South India, but now with all the borders being sealed and we not knowing that how long it's going to take for things to open up, he wants to know that how does he manage now, how does he replan things, how can he think about reaching out, still being a part of the school in South India. So I guess this is the dilemma that the student is facing.
No, no, absolutely. So I do want to tell the student that he's not the, he in some ways, yes, his batch is in a unique situation, but certainly he's not in a unique situation. We have many students who have signed up to come to the US, and now visas are not being issued, and in a lot of ways, students are not able to travel. We have several students from other parts of the US who have secured admissions and they're not able to travel and they don't know what will happen. I assume the same thing prevails in India as well, right? Where I do know that because of the lockdown, that several schools are considering different options, right? So one is to, in times like this, you have to wait and see what happens. If in some ways, if you're lucky, things will clear by June, July, and hopefully then to some extent normalcy will resume. Although I have to highlight, to assume that one fine morning we'll get up and we'll say, okay, let's shut the reality now and go back to back to the future is not going to happen. It's going to be a transition process into the into the past, so to speak. Most schools are working towards enabling the next semester. So most schools will have a combination of online classes versus, once everything clears up, then you could go to the to the jurisdiction where you really want to go. Most schools are going to think about maybe extending the semester or maybe changing the dates of starting the semester. All universities globally are working towards towards a solution, assuming right, things don't clear up by the end of July. I need you to absolutely know that every university across the globe, European, Indian, American, Canadian, everybody is working towards all of these things, right? Australian, I'm quite aware of how many of these schools are working on these things. So A, wait and watch. B, I don't think this situation, which is really just an interim situation, should in any way change how you perceive the rest of your how you perceive where you want to go. But it could also mean that you look at other options, have a plan B, plan C, plan D. However, I would always work towards saying, how could I get to my plan A with the least amount of disruption, right? So that's how I would look at it. So if you really did want to go to a place in South India, you should absolutely contact them, tell them that you still have an interest, and tell them, even if you're a little bit late because of the COVID situation, you will finally wind up there and find out what is required in order to become a student there and go for it.
You're absolutely right when you say that. And I'd also like to share a little bit of a perspective here. I think this is a good litmus test for students to test that how futuristic looking each of these schools are. So today, the best way to analyze this is to see that, okay, so we are in this lockdown situation, but how many schools are actually able to facilitate online learning for their students without affecting their term or without affecting their studies?
That's true.
Right? So
That's
this
true.
is actually a factor that you guys must look into, because we like it or not, this is a reality. There can be more lockdowns in the future, but your career and your education must not be hampered in any way. So you must analyze the fact that whichever school you're looking at, is it futuristic looking? is it committed to education in the sense that they have adequate digital infrastructure to cater to their students during a lockdown situation as well? So I think this has also now become a very important parameter for you to be able to judge that which is a good law school that you must go to in India.
Can I
um
just add?
yeah.
Absolutely true. I cannot stress that more. And in some ways, I have to say, even in the United States, right? Because in some ways, we have moved online pretty quickly. We have felt that, yes, schools who've gone online have not disrupted the education. But I do know schools, even here in the US, that did not do it are struggling. So more so in a country like India, right? Especially if you're signing up for the next 5 years, which are going to, the next 5 years will, is critical for you to shape your career. The ability of a school to quickly accommodate to the realities of time in terms of providing online education, exams, and ensuring that teachers are able to cope with all of that by being flexible and fluent in all of these platforms is an absolute must, right? And not only that, the ability to provide all of that in an interdisciplinary fashion as well. So absolutely. So from that perspective, I cannot agree with you more there.
All right. So, ma'am, another question that we have is that according to you, which private university would you suggest as the best in India?
Oh, that question comes up to me in the context of several jurisdictions, right? Um, there is not, I mean, there are a lot of universities, both private and public, right? Um, and rankings or whatever, it does help a little bit. But I do think ultimately it's a question of what helps the student. It's not a question of, I mean, we were talking with one of my friends the other day, right? And we were talking about what area of law would best suit XYZ or the second years at this point of time. And we kind of said it really is like the marriage game. There is no one person who's, marriageable for the entire world. Hopefully not, right? So it's the same way. There is no one school, that would cater to the whole of the country or to the whole of the population or to the whole of the globe, right? It really is a factum of what the student likes, but more a factum of what the university provides. When I went to National Law School, it was a new school. I was the second batch at the National Law School, right? And most people thought, well, she's taking a gamble, right? And turned out it's not a gamble, right? But at that time, National Law School in Bangalore provided a type of education that did not exist in the past, right? And so, as a student, you have to consider your life today is a little bit different. You're on the cusp of technology versus traditional transitions. And so you have to look for a university that provides you the things that you want, right? Provides you the specialization, provides you the ability to work with different schools, different areas of not just law, but of science, of sociology, and things like that, and then make the choice, right? So it's not a question of always, it's not a question of always going by the books. It's also a question of being able to foresee what will work for you and then work with that. So yes, I do think there are some very good schools within India, abroad, everywhere. But ultimately, the choice is your ability to make that decision. And again, I always feel that one of the best decisions I made was going to a new school like National Law School, which not because it was National Law School. At that time, it was a new university that did innovative education, that provided us the interdisciplinary, to some extent, perspective, which it does not do much anymore, but it used to do quite a bit at that time. So again, any school that does that any school that's able to change with the changing times is what you should look at. And so, Kritika, I do want to say I do want to invite you to add a sentence or two about how Vijayabhumi is actually, we are working towards accommodating to the changing times at Vijayabhumi University.
Yes, ma'am, surely. So I would strongly say that, which private university would be the best. It totally depends on the student, on what are your requirements and what do you aspire to be. So if you're somebody who wants to do a more traditional or conventional law degree, then it makes more sense for you to be in a traditional law course. But if you're somebody who's like wanting to pursue the futuristic legal opportunities, like making a career in upcoming areas like technologies law, cyber security, privacy law, etc., then it's very important, as ma'am highlighted, for you to go to a school that is more interdisciplinary in its approach. So here, if I have to add a line about Vijayabhumi University, we're the only law school right now in India where, along with pursuing a law degree, you also have the options of pursuing majors and minors from other programs that we offer. Like, we offer a program in design thinking, a bachelor's of design. We have a business school where we offer various degree business specializations that law students can also choose. We have a school of technology where we are offering specialized degrees and courses as majors and minors in artificial intelligence, data security, cyber security, as well as data sciences. So if you're somebody who's wanting to do something new, tap into the new opportunities, then this is the kind of program that you want to be in, where you can curate your own degree, be a part of this university, decide whatever majors and minors you want to from the plethora of subjects that are available to you. And this also ties up very well with one of the questions that I see somebody has asked, that in what Vijayabhumi University is different in comparison to other universities in providing safe career options, and also tell us about the discovery over self-interest. So this is a university where the entire thrust is on the child discovering their interests. So how we facilitate that is, for a student who is going to law school, in your first year, you do courses from our School of Data Sciences, from our business school, from our design school, so that you get to taste each of these courses and also develop a more holistic understanding of other subjects as well. And that is how we facilitate the discovery process, because as you get exposed to more and more subjects, that is when you'll be able to discover what you actually like doing, right? So that is something Vijayabhumi University does. And how do we ensure that we are providing you safe career options? By giving you, these new age options where you do a lot of interdisciplinary learning. You have a chance to actually be more than a traditional lawyer. So if you're somebody who's done a specialization in technology as well as law, you have more options that are open to you today. You can work as an in-house counsel. You can join one of the law firms. If you want to join one of the consultancy services as a cybersecurity consultant, it opens a lot more opportunities for you. So that's how we ensure that students have access to more career opportunities. I'm moving on to the next topic. Ask, that is law a secure profession for 2025?
Sorry?
Is law a secured profession for 2025?
Is law a secure profession for 2025? Yes, absolutely. Law is one of the few professions where you weave your own ultimate career path, right? It's not like an area where you're dependent in a lot of ways, right? As long as people on a company or or even in a law firm, as long as there are people, there will be disputes. As long as there are people, there will be need for regulations. As long as there is a government, you will see that there is a need for government to intervene, not intervene, government to say things, not say things, XYZ. So as long as, I always say, as long as there are people, absolutely, law will remain an important profession. So yes, the quick answer is law will be an important profession even in 2025, and law will continue to provide each lawyer with a different types of options, right? Solicitor, barrister, litigating lawyer, corporate lawyer, working in an international organization, professor, administrator, different kinds of options that not every other legal journalist is another one, right? So yes, absolutely. Law provide those kind of options, absolutely.
Ma'am, another question that we have is, when a pandemic of this sort occurs, how will the authorities of law schools tackle this pandemic situation while selecting students and while conducting their selection procedures?
That's a great question too. You know, when you think about a university, you have to understand that universities have different functions, right? Selecting students, selecting faculty, selecting administrators who will administer what the administrators and faculty want, and then selecting people who will ensure that once the students are ready to go into the market, they get jobs, they're able to do what they want, and people who will oversee the job market such that when students are ready to graduate, they're able to help students. So, these are all different functions, and I've only given you, I want to say, the top maybe 4 out of 400 functions of every of every university, right? In a pandemic like that, the biggest role for the first thing that people would think about, authorities would think about, is how to not disrupt what is happening. We did not want to disrupt the education. We did not want to disrupt student experience. So the first thing we did is carry it online, right? That does not mean every other function of the law school stopped, right? Or of the university stopped. The function of choosing students, working with students, showcasing the law school or showcasing the university, continuing the programs we did at the university, all of that is vested with all of that is vested with a bunch of with a bunch of administrators, and they continue to. So we are continuing to provide admissions, we are continuing to talk with students, and I can see Kritika is doing the same thing. Ms. Bandari is talking with all of you. She's enabling webinars, and she's enabling the ability for students to reach out and talk with Vijayabhumi University. I see that from other schools too. So that's a different function altogether. So students will be selected, students will be chosen, and there will be a set of people who will work towards, welcoming the students and settling them well, and then making sure their classes go on. Similarly, there are a set of students who are working right now, right, to ensure that there are a set of students who are working, set of administrators who are working right now to ensure that students who graduate, even during these very, very difficult times, are able to graduate, and then they're able to find jobs. They're working with employers to highlight some of the issues they've faced and how that could affect their grades and so on and so forth. So that's all the process of the administrators. A good school, a good university will know that each one of these areas will have to go in an undisrupted manner. And globally, good universities are doing this, whether in India, Italy, Spain, Japan, China, or the United States. Good universities are doing all of those functions without disruption. Any questions? I think I'm kind of assuming that Kritika has a problem. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chat function, and what's the when a pandemic occurs, everyone has to face some kind of problems and has to compromise certain things. But when it comes to selection of law students, are a bit more concerned, right, about their future. My question is, how will the authorities of the law school tackle this pandemic situation regarding the selection process of students? I think I answered that just now. I do want to highlight that we are working with the admissions department in every law school, but certainly certainly in both India and in the US, I'm very, very aware that we are working with law schools, and we are and the admissions department admissions department filters students. We get information and then we talk to them. So that function is happening without any disruption, zero disruption. Which country's legal profession is mostly affected due to COVID? So I do want to say the term affected is a very sort of a different term, right? It's not that well, in all countries, courts have closed, right? So, it's not a disruption. It's an interim change in process. But in all of these countries, in some way, all professions have been disrupted: legal, medical. Think about anything, and research. Everything has been affected. The question is, how are people managing it? Every country is managing it. Our courts are coming up with decisions. Our courts are still coming up with all courts. Even in India, I'm saying that. In the US, I'm saying that. In England, I'm saying that. So in every country, people are moving to the next, trying to minimize the disruption. And so it's not that the profession is affected, the profession is changing to the realities of time, right? What is the validity? Okay, I'm so sorry. Our future is going to be occupied with technology, social media, and AI after this. 5 years industry will come up with these revolutions. Then why is it important for interdisciplinary courses? We do a lot of AI law, I have to tell you that, right? And we realize that not only is interdisciplinary studies important, and I'll tell you why in a second. Basic legal courses have become as important as interdisciplinary courses. So very recently, one of the self-driven cars in Arizona went and hit a pedestrian, right? There was another self-driven car I think it was in Pennsylvania, which was programmed by someone who was drunk, and it went and affected. At some point, it went slowly and then got into an accident, and that accident went into somebody else's property or some such facts, right? So self-driven technology does not mean there is no liability. There is liability. To the extent, then the question is, who is liable? Is it the owner, the person who programmed? Is it the company that created the self-driven technology? There are several levels of liability. We also see that self-driven cars, especially, things like Tesla, does not work as well if you have to go long distance in the winter time. So if you have heavy snow, for instance, then the amount of mileage that Tesla gives is just not the same as the kind of mileage it gives during summer. Right. So if somebody plans their whole trip during winter without realizing this, apparently the mileage changes depending on how much snow and so on and so forth. Right. So under these circumstances, then the question is, then the question is, how do we, how does that work in these situations? Right. And we have seen that the need for basic law to inform AI law is very, very important. So I would not discount the role of basic law, like property and torts and contracts. I would also not discount the sociological perspective. Right, as you move towards, one of the biggest questions the US is facing is, do we have to do voting online for the November elections? We faced that 2 days back in Wisconsin. Do people have to go during COVID-19 and stand in line, right, despite all the technological changes? And the court said, absolutely yes, right? There is no other way to do this. So remember that AI and technology does not change the need for it's ultimately what society wants. It's ultimately how it'll affect economy. It'll ultimately how the data says what it is. We know COVID is a bad pandemic because of data sciences, right? And so the legal questions are informed in a lot of ways from data sciences. So all of these are really important aspects as well.